The Jayne Mansfield crash incident. On June 29, 1967, Jayne Mansfield prepared for a late-night drive from Biloxi to New Orleans. The 34-year-old Hollywood actress had just finished a nightclub performance at the Gus Stevens Supper Club. Mansfield sat in the front passenger seat of a 1966 Buick Electra 225. Ronnie Harrison, a 20-year-old driver, sat behind the wheel. In the back seat, 3 children slept peacefully. Mariska Hargitay, age 3, and her 2 brothers, Mickey 6 and Zoltan 8. Highway 90 stretched ahead through the Louisiana darkness. Dense fog had settled over the coastal highway. Buick's headlights cut through the humid air as Harrison maintained highway speed. Mansfield wore a blonde wig. The children remained asleep in the back seat, unaware of the journey ahead. Around 2:25 a.m., the Buick approached a construction zone near Slidell, Louisiana. A truck ahead was spraying pesticide to control the mosquito population, creating additional fog and reducing visibility even further. The spray truck moved slowly, with a large tank trailer following behind it. Warning signs and flares marked the construction area, but the dense fog obscured them from approaching traffic. Harrison failed to see the slow-moving vehicles ahead. The fog had become so thick that the truck's taillights were barely visible. The Buick struck the rear of the trailer at nearly full highway speed. The car's front end dove underneath the trailer's rear bumper. The trailer's underside, positioned at exactly the height of the car's roofline, acted like a blade. The impact sheared off the entire top portion of the Buick's passenger compartment. The roof was severed cleanly at window level, crushing everything above the dashboard. The 3 adults in the front seat died instantly from massive head trauma. Mansfield's blonde wig was torn from her head and thrown onto the highway, leading to widespread but false reports that she had been decapitated. Brody and Harrison also suffered fatal head injuries from the trailer's underside. The force of the impact drove the car forward several more feet before it came to rest beneath the trailer. The children in the back seat survived the crash with various injuries. The rear portion of the car remained largely intact, protecting them from the trailer that had crushed the front compartment. Mariska Hargitay suffered a small scar above her right eye that remains visible today. Her brother sustained cuts and bruises, but no life-threatening injuries. Emergency responders arrived at the scene within minutes of the crash. The fog continued to hamper rescue efforts and created dangerous conditions for other vehicles approaching the accident site. Paramedics pronounced the 3 adults dead at the scene. The children were transported to a local hospital for treatment of their injuries. The crash led to federal requirements for rear underride guards on large trucks, designed to prevent cars from sliding underneath trailers during rear-end collisions. The Ricardo Hornos burning car crash incident. On March 15, 1987, Ricardo Hornos finished his shift at a downtown San Francisco office building. The 28-year-old maintenance supervisor walked to his car in the parking garage. Hornos drove a 1985 Honda Civic that he had purchased 6 months earlier. The compact car had 87,000 miles on the odometer and needed minor repairs, but it provided reliable transportation for his daily commute to his home in Daly City. Rain had been falling steadily since early afternoon. The storm created slick conditions on Highway 101, where standing water collected in low-lying sections of roadway. Hornos merged onto the southbound lanes around 6:15 p.m., joining the heavy evening traffic. Visibility was reduced due to spray from other vehicles and the steady rainfall. Most drivers had reduced their speed to account for the wet conditions. About 12 miles south of downtown, traffic began to slow near the Candlestick Park exit. A minor fender bender in the right lane had created a bottleneck, forcing vehicles to merge left. Cars were moving at approximately 25 miles per hour in stop-and-go patterns. Hornos followed about 3 car lengths behind a delivery truck, maintaining a safe distance on the wet pavement. A panel van in the left lane suddenly lost control on a patch of standing water. The driver overcorrected, sending the van skidding sideways across 2 lanes of traffic. The van struck the delivery truck in front of Hornos, causing a chain reaction collision. The truck jackknifed into Hornos' Honda, pushing it into the concrete center barrier at about 35 miles per hour. The impact with the barrier ruptured the Honda's fuel tank. Gasoline spilled onto the hot exhaust system and ignited immediately. Flames spread rapidly under the car and began entering the passenger compartment through gaps in the floor pan. Dense black smoke filled the interior within seconds, making it impossible for Hornos to see the door handles or window controls. Hornos tried to open the driver's door, but the impact had jammed the mechanism. The door handle moved freely but would not engage the latch. He attempted to roll down the window using the manual crank, but the handle had broken off during the collision. Hornos then tried to reach across to the passenger door, but his seatbelt had locked in place and would not release. The buckle appeared to be functioning normally, but the mechanism would not disengage under pressure. The fire spread rapidly through the engine engine compartment and began melting the plastic dashboard components. Toxic fumes from burning vinyl and foam filled the car's interior. Hornos covered his nose and mouth with his shirt sleeve, but the smoke continued to penetrate his lungs. He could hear other drivers outside attempting to break the windows with tools and rocks from the roadside. Two truck drivers stopped their vehicles and ran to assist. They struck the rear window repeatedly with a tire iron, but the safety glass held together despite forming spiderweb cracks. The front windshield proved equally resistant to their efforts. The fire had grown too intense for them to approach the driver's side door, where flames were now visible through the windows. By the time emergency crews arrived, the Honda was fully engulfed in flames. Firefighters deployed foam to suppress the blaze, but the intense heat prevented immediate rescue attempts. The car's interior temperature had reached over 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Hornos had succumbed to smoke inhalation and thermal injuries before rescuers could extract him from the vehicle. The fire department required nearly 20 minutes to extinguish the blaze and cool the wreckage sufficiently for recovery operations. Investigation revealed that the fuel tank rupture and subsequent fire were caused by the specific angle of impact with the barrier, which drove sharp metal fragments into the tank wall. The Ryan Fellows drag racing crash incident. On August 7, 2022, Ryan Fellows arrived at Las Vegas Motor Speedway for filming with the Discovery Channel's Street Outlaws television series. The 41-year-old drag racer from Amarillo, Texas, had been competing professionally for over 15 years. Fellows drove a heavily modified 1998 Nissan 240SX that produced over 1,200 horsepower through its turbocharged engine. The car featured a full roll cage, 5-point racing harness, fire suppression system, and other safety equipment required for professional drag racing. The filming session was part of the show's No Prep Kings series, where drivers compete on tracks without traditional drag racing preparation like traction compound. Fellows had competed in dozens of similar events across the country. The Las Vegas Motor Speedway provided a controlled environment with professional safety crews, medical personnel, and proper emergency equipment stationed throughout the facility. Fellows completed his pre-run safety checks around 3:30 p.m. The crew verified that his helmet was properly secured and that all safety systems were functioning correctly. The ambient temperature was 102 degrees Fahrenheit, creating challenging conditions for both engines and tires. The track's surface temperature exceeded 140 degrees, reducing available traction for the high-powered vehicles. During the 8th mile pass, Fellows' Nissan accelerated normally off the starting line. The car reached approximately 180 miles per hour by the 660-foot mark, running slightly quicker than his qualifying time from earlier in the day. Onboard telemetry later showed the engine was producing full power, and all systems were operating within normal parameters. Fellows maintained control through the middle section of the track. At approximately the 1,000-foot mark, traveling near 200 miles per hour, the car suddenly veered toward the right side of the track. The rear suspension appeared to fail, causing the vehicle to lose directional stability. Fellows attempted to correct the slide, but the extreme speed made recovery impossible. The car began rotating clockwise as it left the prepared racing surface. The Nissan struck the concrete barrier at an oblique angle while still traveling at approximately 150 miles per hour. The initial impact occurred on the passenger side, causing the vehicle to launch to the air and begin tumbling. The car completed 2 full rotations before striking the barrier a second time, this time on the roof and driver's side. The roll cage absorbed much of the impact energy, but the forces exceeded the structure's design limits. Safety crews reached the wreckage within 90 seconds of the impact. The car had come to rest upright but was heavily damaged throughout the passenger compartment. Fellows remained conscious initially and were able to respond to rescue personnel. The safety crews used hydraulic tools to remove sections of the roll cage and extract him from the vehicle. The extraction process required 12 minutes due to the extent of structural damage. Fellows was transported by helicopter to University Medical Center in Las Vegas, arriving within 30 minutes of the crash. Medical personnel worked to stabilize his condition, but the injuries sustained during the high-speed impact were too severe. Fellows had suffered massive internal trauma despite the protection provided by his safety equipment. He died from his injuries at 6:47 p.m., approximately 3 hours after the accident. The crash investigation revealed that a rear suspension component had failed due to metal fatigue, causing the loss of control. The part had been inspected according to racing protocols, but microscopic cracks had developed from repeated stress loading during previous races. The Diane Schuler wrong-way crash incident. On July 26, 2009, Diane Schuler loaded 5 children into her 2003 Ford Windstar minivan at Hunter Lake Campground in Parksville, New York. The 36-year-old mother from West Babylon had spent the weekend camping with her family. Schuler was driving her 2 children, Aaron 2 and Brian 5, along with her 3 nieces, Emma Hance 8, Allison Hance 7, and Katie Hance 5. The children had enjoyed swimming and hiking during their weekend getaway and were looking forward to returning home. Schuler began the drive home around 9:30 a.m. The route would take them south south on Route 17 through the Catskill Mountains before connecting to other highways leading back to Long Island. Schuler had made this drive many times before and was familiar with the roads. She stopped at a McDonald's in Liberty, New York around 10:30 a.m. to purchase breakfast for the children and use the restroom. Video surveillance from the McDonald's showed Schuler appeared normal during the stop. She walked steadily, interacted normally with the cashier, and helped the children with their food. Schuler purchased coffee. Around 11:37 a.m., Schuler stopped at a Sunoco gas station in Liberty. She purchased a bottle of Absolute vodka and some orange juice. Surveillance cameras captured her making these purchases alone, while the children remained in the minivan. Schuler appeared to move normally and showed no obvious signs of impairment during this transaction. She paid cash for the items and returned to the vehicle. At approximately 1:02 p.m., Schuler called her brother Warren Hance from her cell phone. She told him she was not feeling well and was having trouble seeing clearly. Hans offered to come get them, but Schuler said she would pull over and wait for him. The call lasted about 4 minutes, and Hans immediately left his home to drive north and locate them. This would be their final conversation. Around 1:15 p.m., Schuler entered the Taconic State Parkway going the wrong direction at the Pleasantville Road interchange. The parkway is a divided highway with a grass median separating northbound and southbound traffic. Schuler drove south in the northbound lanes for 1.7 miles, traveling directly into oncoming traffic. Multiple drivers called 911 to report the wrong-way vehicle. The first 911 call came in at 1:33 p.m. from a motorist who reported seeing a red minivan driving south in the northbound lanes near Briarcliff Manor. Additional calls followed from other drivers who had to swerve to avoid collisions. State police immediately dispatched units to intercept the vehicle, but Schuler continued driving at approximately 70 miles per hour against traffic. At 1:35 p.m., Schuler's minivan collided head-on with a 2004 Chevrolet Trailblazer driven by Michael Bastardi, 81. The SUV also carried Bastardi's son Guy, 49, and their family friend Daniel Longo, 74. The collision completely destroyed both vehicles. Schuler died instantly from massive trauma, as did 4 of the 5 children in her van. The 3 men in the SUV were also killed immediately upon impact. Only Schuler's 5-year-old son Brian survived the crash, suffering broken bones and severe injuries but remaining conscious. Emergency responders found him hanging upside down in his car seat, crying but alert. The Fireball Roberts NASCAR crash incident. On May 24, 1964, Glenn Fireball Roberts arrived at Charlotte Motor Speedway for the World 600 race. The 35-year-old NASCAR champion from Daytona Beach, Florida, had won 33 races in his career and was considered one of the sport's most skilled drivers. Roberts drove a white and gold Ford Galaxy 500 for Holman Moody Racing, one of NASCAR's premier teams. Safety equipment in 1964 NASCAR was minimal compared to modern standards. Roberts wore a standard helmet and seatbelt, but roll bars were primitive and fire suppression systems did not exist. The fuel cell was a basic metal tank mounted in the trunk area without modern safety bladders or foam filling. Drivers wore cotton uniforms that provided little protection against fire. The cars carried no onboard fire extinguishers or emergency shutoff systems. The race began at 6 p.m. under overcast skies with temperatures in the mid-80s. Roberts started from the 3rd position and quickly moved toward the front of the field. His Ford handled well in the early laps, and he was running in 2nd place when the first caution flag appeared on lap 7. Roberts had been averaging over 140 miles per hour on the 1.5-mile tri-oval, maintaining close contact with race leader Fred Lorenzen. As the field bunched up for the restart, Roberts was running directly behind Ned Jarrett's Ford in the inside line. The cars were traveling approximately 100 miles per hour when Jarrett's vehicle suddenly slowed due to engine problems. Roberts had less than 1 second to react as Jarrett's car dropped back toward his position. The closing speed between the two vehicles was nearly 40 miles per hour. Roberts attempted to steer left to avoid Jarrett, but Junior Johnson's Dodge was already occupying that position. With nowhere to go, Roberts' Ford struck Jarrett's rear bumper and became airborne. The car flipped twice before landing upside down in a shower of sparks along the concrete retaining wall. The impact ruptured the fuel tank, and gasoline sprayed across the hot exhaust system and engine components. Fire erupted immediately as the fuel ignited. Roberts remained conscious and trapped inside the overturned vehicle as flames engulfed the cockpit area. The fuel continued, feeding the fire, creating temperatures exceeding 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit around the driver's compartment. Roberts struggled to free himself from the seatbelt and crawl through the driver's side window opening, but the intense heat and smoke made escape nearly impossible. Track workers and fellow drivers rushed to the scene with portable fire extinguishers, but the primitive equipment was inadequate for a gasoline fire of this magnitude. Ned Jarrett and several other drivers attempted to pull Roberts from the burning car, suffering burns to their hands and arms in the process. The track's fire truck required nearly 2 minutes to reach the accident scene due to its location on the far side of the speedway. Rescue crews finally extracted Roberts from the wreckage after battling the flames. He had sustained 3rd-degree burns over 40% of his body, primarily on his his face, hands, arms, and torso. Roberts remained conscious during the extraction and was transported immediately to Charlotte Memorial Hospital. Medical personnel began treating him for severe thermal injuries and smoke inhalation. Despite initial optimism from doctors, Roberts' condition deteriorated over the following weeks. The extensive burns became infected, and he developed pneumonia from smoke damage to his lungs. Roberts underwent multiple skin graft surgeries and spent weeks in the hospital's burn unit fighting for his life. His weight dropped from 185 pounds to less than 140 pounds during his hospitalization. On July 2, 1964, 39 days after the crash, Glenn "Fireball" Roberts died from complications related to his injuries. The cause of death was listed as pneumonia and infection secondary to thermal burns. Roberts' death shocked the NASCAR community and prompted the sanctioning body to implement its first major safety improvements, including better fire suppression systems and fuel cell regulations. If you want to see more videos like this, click the video on screen now and make sure to subscribe.